Hello, everyone, and welcome to this webinar today. This is part of the series on stewardship through new eyes, growing God's kingdom in a material world. This is the third one we've done, and we're doing it today on June 4th, which in various calendars, including the Anglican calendar, is a day to commemorate Pope John the 23rd. And so I just thinking of the work that culminated or came about through the Second Vatican Council, which he initiated, and finding ourselves this many years later doing this ecumenically, I think is not only in the spirit of the covenant that of which the Anglican, Roman Catholic, Lutheran, and Ukrainian Catholic churches are doing here in this part of the world, part of the country, but also in the spirit of Pope John the 23rd. So welcome, and we're just going to talk a little bit about a few of the technical things before we begin. I'm the moderator for today, but if you have any technical issues and are wondering about connections or something that's going wrong, if you place your cursor at the bottom of your screen, you'll see the chat feature. And if you have a technical issue, you can direct your chat to Nicholas Jesson, and then he will be able to solve your problems, mostly. But he's the person for the technical things. And then if there are questions or comments that you want to direct to the speakers or to need something that you want brought up, just send that to everyone so everyone can see the comments and we're aware of the conversation as we go along. And I'll try and pick them up, but it also means if I'm missing something, someone else can pick it up as well. The other thing that I wanted to say is just our topic today is relational giving, and we have two speakers. The first speaker, two of them are Susan Graham Walker, who was a former manager of congregational giving and stewardship with the United Church of Canada, and now stewardship staff with the Anglican Church, and Jane Harding, a stewardship and gifts officer for Western Canada with the United Church of Canada. So basically from the Canadian Shield to the Pacific Ocean and into the Pacific Ocean. So a big part of the country. And we thank them for joining us from the various parts of the country in which they live. So they'll be, after the opening prayer, we'll be turning it over to them and they'll lead us in the topic of the day. We're also going to then, after they've presented, go into breakout groups like we did last week. These will be smaller breakout groups this time, and two questions which I will give you at the time and which will also be sent to you in your chat rooms for you to talk about when you get there. Then we'll have an opportunity to come back with the highlights of what we've talked about and a bit more follow-up discussion, taking into consideration anything you have wanting to bring up at that point as well. I have one announcement I'm going to make now and then reiterate it at the end as well. And that is, this was a 4-part series, but we have added a 5th one. Your registration will still work for it. And that is a hands-on session with one of the staff at Canada Helps for those of you who want to better utilize online giving, either because you're on Canada Helps and would like to know what additional features you could use that would pick up some of the themes from today perhaps and make it more relational, or you've never actually utilized that and your church has a page on there that isn't activated and you'd like to know how to do it. So Lucas, who's the staff person who's going to be leading us in that, is well used to doing this, but he is wondering if you have any particular questions or concerns. So if you have any, please type them into the chat and we'll be able to gather them at the end and I can pass them on to him. I'll remind you of that at the end and you could email them to me as well. I'll give you my email address at that time. All of that being said, have I missed anything, Nick, that we need to be talking about?
I believe that's everything.
Okay. And that being the case, then we're going to have ask Murray. Now, Murray is here in real time, but the prayer that Murray is doing has been recorded because we had a few glitches last week with people getting in, having something to do with an update from Zoom. So Murray decided to make sure the prayer was here. And so Nick will bring us
Yeah.
prayer, and then we'll begin with the presentation.
The Lord be with you. Let us pray. Oh God, we thank you for the many blessings that you pour upon us. We thank you for the gift of creation. We thank you for the many gifts that you give us. And one of those gifts is the gift of relationships. We pray that you would strengthen our relationships with our brothers and sisters from the many different denominations, and that we would focus on your calling, that we would all be one. And so, Lord, as we pray this day, we pray that our eyes and our ears might be open, that we might be challenged and be motivated by your love to serve you and give you glory. Amen.
Thank you, Murray. Murray is an authorized lay minister with the Saskatchewan Synod of the ELCIC, the Evangelical Lutheran Church in Canada. And now I turn it over to Jane and Susan.
Great. Well,
Susan,
I'm
go.
glad to be back. Go. I'm going. You go. Jane's a friend. Jane's another friend who I've had the great pleasure of working with over the last 8 or 9 years. We've both been on the staff of the United Church of Canada, and Jane's abilities are matched by the territory that she covers. Right? She is just amazing, and you'll hear more about that, and you'll understand why I'm so enthusiastic. So we're here today to see if we can encourage your thinking around how to make the whole all of this discipleship work in stewardship more relational, and it's based on it's good practice, but it has really come to the fore through the work of Eric Law. Eric Law is an Episcopal priest in the Diocese of Los Angeles. He runs an organization called the Kaleidoscope Institute. Well worth checking his blog and his site. And he is the author of a book that is sort of one of the top 5 or 6 that I think are wonderful in the area of stewardship, and it's called Holy Currencies. And his theory is that there are 6 currencies that need to flow in the life of a congregation for there to be increased health and capacity and ability to serve God's mission. And money is one of them, and one of the others is relationship. And it is his contention that we spend a lot of time in church, like the rest of the world, simply operating transactionally. We have a relationship with the service groups that look after the boiler, or do the work on the landscaping, or whatever it is. And his ideas are to find as many ways as possible of turning those transactions into relationships. One of the ones that examples that seems to me so obvious but doesn't seem to get picked up is there are very many churches, and I'll speak in terms of the Anglican Church in Ontario, that have another denomination that use their space at another time, perhaps on Sunday afternoon or evening, and they have no connection with them. They are simply yet another group that pays for their use of their space. Surely we can be doing, especially in this setting of an ecumenical group, find some ways of building relationships. So we're going to look at this from the perspective of giving, and I want to just go back to reiterate that there are basically 3 spiritual practices that are underneath all of giving programs, and especially those in the church. The things we need to be keeping in mind is that we have to inspire people. We have to help them understand what it is that what impact they have by their generosity. We have to invite them. We need to be really specific in encouraging people to be generous and to put their financial energy behind things that are meaningful to them. And third, we need to thank them. And this is in my 8 years of spending a lot of time focused on these, we've encouraged people to start with thanking. If the other 2 of inspiring, inviting are just a bit scary or too much work to get started immediately, why not thank? The creation of a culture of gratitude has been an amazing culture change agent in congregations. And, I've never heard anybody has left the church because they were thanked too much. Usually when do these kinds of workshops, people are going, thank? Well, one response is, well, I don't need to be thanked. I do this because of my love of God and my commitment to my faith. And the other is, I don't think I've ever been thanked. And we'd like to encourage you to see this as one of the really important ways to build relationship. And there's another little trinity of words that I would like to encourage you to keep in mind when you're thinking about thanking. And that's to be timely, personal, and sincere. So timely is making sure that a gift is recognized and thanked almost as soon as possible when an organization has received that gift. Now, if you're a monthly donor, that doesn't mean that every week you necessarily get a handwritten note. But if you are a first-time giver, and if you have people signing up on Canada Helps to be a donor, that's a first opportunity for you to connect with that person, turn the transaction of signing up for Canada Helps into a relationship and say, thank you. It's amazing that you have shown such confidence in the work and ministry that we do. We are very grateful for you joining us in working on God's mission here. So I'm not sure if this is one of Jane's experiences, but I go to a lot of churches visiting and doing workshops and that sort of thing. I always make sure I make a donation. And I have to say that it is not the routine for me to receive a thank you, even though I have never given to this organization before. The best I get is my income tax receipt. Always get that. It might have a note attached to it. One of the first things you can be thinking about for what happens in the coming winter season is if you're putting a stamp on that envelope, you might as well fill the envelope with as much information about what it is the generosity of your people has encouraged during the year. So finding the way of being timely, you want to be personal. There's a United Church in Calgary, Hillhurst United, where the thank you note has some kind of standard text, but they always leave a big space at the top of the letter where the rector hand sign addresses the salutation, "Dear Jane," and then says something about that person, recognizes what it is that is so important about their contribution to the community. And then there is the body of the letter and personal and sincere. Those are the 3 things to keep in mind. There are now quite a lot of ways to think about this in our COVID era. One thing that I have been hearing in my in the various groups that I've been part of over the past 3 months is that while worship may not be meeting everybody's needs or having or have been able to be to live to the standard that people have expected in their congregation, is that pastoral leadership have connected with people. They've connected with as many people in their congregations as possible. One of the funny things that has happened as a result is that parish member lists are suddenly being updated, and people's addresses have gone from 2 or 3 apartments or homes ago to the correct one. And it's a good thing that that call and that connection has come first pastorally, but it is an opportunity now for follow-up from the members of your congregational giving team or stewardship committee. It's important, I think, at this point to thank people for their continued support. Congregation I go to in Toronto, we sent either an email that was personalized or a handwritten note to everybody who had kept giving between, coming up to Easter, and also recognizing those who have made, when we were aware that they had increased their giving at this time. So that's something you might want to consider. And it's one way of turning that transaction, that putting a check in an envelope and sending it to the church, or signing up for Canada Helps. It's a way of making sure that you are building a relationship with the people who are being really generous. Jane's has a lot of experience and has been thinking a good deal about what relationship and hospitality and generosity have in common. And she's going to share a little bit about her experience. So over to you, Jane.
Thank you, Susan. That was like amazing. Thank you. Thank you. Did you hear me? Thank you.
I did. Thank you.
You know, I used to have, I still have.
One of the things is you get
thanked.
Stop
talking. No. Oh.
You get thanked for thanking. Okay.
Yes, I know.
Have you had the experience though? You send a thank you note.
Yeah. And they go, anyway, thanks for the thank you note. I'm going to shut up now. Yeah, I know. We have lots. Thank you. Yeah. So yes, and that is funny, right? And I think it is a little bit of a churchy thing where we just kind of go, oh no, really it was nothing. Oh shucks, no, I didn't. And nobody likes to be pointed out and looked at and brought to the front of the chancel and all that stuff. Well, maybe some people do, but a lot of people just feel it's their Christian work to be doing the work in the background, and no, I don't need a thank you. But when you think about it, why wouldn't you thank people who are doing literally volunteer work, or in the secular world what would be considered volunteer work, for the good of the kingdom? I think it's important stuff. So one of the things, and I really like Eric Law's stuff too. If you haven't had a chance to read his book, you must do that. I also go kind of back to, I don't know if any of you know or remember a fellow, Kenan Callahan, and he is out of the United States, I think in the Presbyterian tradition. And he talks a lot about, and he uses kind of corporate words to say something like, customer satisfaction. What's that about, right? Customer satisfaction. Are people happy? And if they're happy, how would you know that? How would you know if they're unhappy? Are they voting with their pocketbooks and just going away? And if you don't know why they're going, you're missing a piece of the puzzle. My background is actually, before I came to work for the church 16 years ago almost, I was a professional fundraiser working in long-term care and healthcare and that kind of stuff. I have seen it all. And what I can say about other charities opposed to churches, and not just the United Churches, we're not good at doing the thank you. So if you do nothing else, it's like the real estate thing that says, what's the most important thing about buying a house? Location, location, location. Well, this is relation, relation, relation. People are pretty savvy, those folks that are sitting in the pews, and they are being spoken to by the local hospital foundation and the Heart and Stroke and the cancer, and they're all amazing charities, don't get me wrong, but they kind of do it better than we do. They do that follow-up, they build that relationship, they tell you what's going to happen to your money. Like they say, if you give to this, we're buying a new mammogram machine, or we're going to outfit the ICU, or whatever it is. So people understand that, and I think part of our work as churches is that we need to talk about our mission and our ministry in a way that's compelling and interesting and, like Susan said, inspiring, so that people want to join us. But I don't know anybody that would receive something in the mail from a charity they've never given to, and they would go, oh man, that is the bomb. I'm writing them $100 check and I hope they get back to me. People just don't do that. And so if you've got new people coming to your church, or even quasi new, like people consider themselves new, depending on the size of your small town, for like 5 years. So consider those new people and consider your relationship with them, because we know from the past that stewardship of finances and your energy and your emotion and your skill set and all of those things, people don't tend to offer that up until they're pretty sure they're going to be accepted and loved for it. So that relationship stuff goes right back to hospitality. So when people walk in the church for the first time, I always have this thing, please don't be the fresh meat people. I'm like, oh, fresh meat. Oh my gosh, come on. And what Ken Callahan says is, when new people come, you just got to love them and you got to learn about them. But one of the things he says, as congregations, that newcomers should be offered a chance to join what he calls a caring group, so not a committee, right? So they can explore their own roots, their own relationship, their place, their belonging, because they're seeking. If they've walked in your door, they're seeking. So find out what it is they're looking for and how you can help meet those needs. That's what Christians do. And have a couple of really competent programs that serve people, not use people. These programs are not cash recoverable. I can't tell you how many times I go and work with a congregation and they go, well, yeah, we had this fundraiser and we didn't make any money on it. And I'm like, what were you doing? Were you asking people for money? Well, no, we just kind of had them come. And I said, so that's what I call a friend raiser as opposed to a fundraiser. Be really clear about that. Fundraiser, friend raiser, and mission and ministry work is not cash recoverable. It's not a wash. That's our ministry. That's where the money goes. So be really clear with people when you're talking about what happens to their money. That's about building relationship. Did you know we feed 100 kids every 2 weeks with this lunch program at the school? Oh, I had no idea about that, because often a stewardship team will have the goal of raising the money. So their goal will be, we need to raise $10,000, as opposed to the goal being, we need to feed 100 hungry kids. And see how the difference is in the conversation. Like, you go and you well, nobody's shaking hands these days, but you go and you meet the new person and you say, oh, let me tell you about this new thing we're doing. And is this new thing, oh my gosh, this new thing, we're raising $10,000. Okay. But instead of saying, we're raising $10,000, you say, I really want to talk to you more about how we've connected in partnership with this local elementary school. And they would be considered, in the poor neighborhood, but we've made this relationship with them, and we're doing clothing drives and bottle drives. Oh, and guess what? We're helping to feed those kids once a week, from the work that we do and the money that you give. And so making that direct contribution, right? And tell people why. The why, of course, is the most important part, and making sure that they get thanked. So hospitality it's not natural to everybody, but in my mind and in my heart, it's one of our strongest Christian values, right? It's like welcome the stranger, hospitality, not fresh meat, hospitality, and love and care. And because most people walk in the door, in my experience, just a little bit broken. We're all just a little bit broken. So I believe that hospitality should be taught, and it should be talked about, and it should be modeled by clergy, by staff, dynamic volunteers, and they should be educated. People need to understand how that hospitality affects the person coming in the door, put themselves in that place. How would you like to be welcomed? I've noticed in many, many congregations, because like Susan, I do a lot of that. They've dropped that whole who's new, who's traveling and visiting family, and then pointing people out. And they don't want that, but they do want to hear the stories, and they do want to understand the why of this church, and why does it exist, and why do people keep coming. And so that's hospitality, when you can tell people about that. Ken and Callahan still, and I'm not sure how many of your congregations do this, but he really believes in the once a year visit with everybody to find out what they're up to and what they have to say about the church. And that often also talks to how do you undo the fresh meat if you may have been eager? Oh, I love that. You know what? Apology. Just, oh, thank you. Thank you so much for coming. And maybe I'm a little bit eager, but that's maybe kind of who I am. I'm one of those people who's just so happy to see you. So sorry if I came on too strong. I always believe in, be as honest as you can. So newcomers dinners and community dinners. And I have an example that I'm just going to share. I have a very good friend, and she's United Churchian. She's married to the Pentecostals. So she's like, it's hard sometimes. They've got a couple of little kids. And of course, I just laugh and go, of course it's hard. It's supposed to be hard, not supposed to be easy. And she came to town, and they were doing some church shopping. So they wanted to find out. So they came to the United Church, and then they went to the Pentecostal church. And she says, I have to say, we arrived with our two boys. They were like 10 and 8, and they were greeted at the door by other children. And the children said, hey, what's your name? And they had been educated on how to shake hands, how to welcome them, ask them their names, all that kind of stuff. They took the information down because, we want to make sure we know who's in our building and why they're there and all that kind of stuff. And the kids went right off to Sunday school. And then the parents were greeted, and they walked down the center aisle, and then somebody else in the pew was what they called a pew greeter, who said, hey, I don't think I know you, but do you want to sit with us? We'd love to sit with you. And so it's sort of an invitation to relationship and sit. And she said, it wasn't really her theology, but she said, it was really good. And 3 days later, she had been out with the kids doing something, and they came home, and hanging on the doorknob of her front door was a bag. I don't know if you guys have Cobb's bread, but it was a Cobb's bread bag with a fresh loaf of bread in it and a thank you card. And the thank you card said, Dear Misty, like they remembered her name. It was wonderful to meet you and your husband and your children. And we just thank you so much for sharing yourselves with us on Sunday. You made it better because you were there, kind of thing. And we hope to see you again. That was it. There was nothing, that was pushy. And she says, it was lovely. I felt really welcome. And You know, it doesn't take much to spark that relationship, but I think hospitality when people walk in the door is the number one way that we need to do that. So yeah, I just want to just quickly add another thing I think is really important is what I call, I've just opened, I have my first client tomorrow, my first guest, an Airbnb in my house. I know. And so my goal is be a super host, be that super host. And how can I get there fast? So anyways, I'm really looking forward to that. But one of the things is relationship, right? You get a little email that says, hey, I've booked, I'm going to be there next week. I always respond with, well, thank you for booking, right? Like this is not rocket science, right? Thank you for booking. Thank you for making this your choice when you come to Salmon Arm. I'm so excited to welcome you to the Blue Spruce Cottage Suites. It's just going to be lovely. I will send you more information a couple of days before you arrive, period. And I've had more people just like, oh my gosh, we can't wait to come. We're so excited. And it doesn't take anything to do that and to be that. And I have a very good friend who's quite elderly, and he says, it costs you nothing to say thank you. It costs you nothing. So always err on the side of love and care and gratitude and hospitality and relationship. And hey, you'll be fine, because we do create those spiritual practices by practicing what we preach. So let's talk about that. I like that. All right, my friends. I think that's it for me. I could go on. I never know when to stop.
Thanks, Jane. So now all of you people in Saskatchewan and Manitoba have met one of the great resources that comes out of BC. So
yes.
Jane would be happy to talk to you if
I'm
you
your
have
girl.
Questions. Yep. And you don't actually have to be the United Church. But what we'd like to do now is we hope that we've sparked some thinking in your little brains out there. Really looking forward to how to put this in practice, and we wanted to give you a chance to work in the breakout rooms in groups of 4, and we have a question that'll get put into, or questions that will get put into the chat for you to consider, and we'll give 15 minutes to this, and you'll be in and Nick is going to put everyone in groups of 4, so you'll have good amount of time to discuss the question. So the question 1 is brainstorm ways of making the connection between gratitude and hospitality. And if you've got, someone might want to be taking notes, because you may well come up with some great ideas. And you may also, one of the things you might want to do is to brainstorm those ideas into the chat, and then everybody will see them. And then how can we do this in our pandemic reality? I guess that almost goes without saying. So if you have some thoughts to share, Nick will be putting you in a group in a matter of seconds. Unmute.
Sorry. Here we go. If anything pops up on your screen asking you to approve the move, you click on it and please say yes. I'm sending you to the rooms right now.
looks like I'm the only one back so far.
Gives them 60 seconds to finish their conversation. So some like to stay for that.
I guess I left too soon. Okay, here's Susan back.
Yeah. I'm going to mute people now. So.
I guess people are coming back. Wondering if anybody has any ideas, heard anything that they would like to share. And I'd like to start it off and invite Carol to share what she was telling us in group 3. Cheryl, can you unmute yourself and tell everyone your great idea?
Was that Carol Sheldon?
Or it
Maybe
might
I got the name wrong. Just a
yeah,
sec.
it might have been me actually,
yes.
Susan. Yeah.
Yes,
okay.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. That's okay. I was thinking,
sorry.
okay, maybe
I got your name wrong. I'm sorry.
That's okay. That's okay.
No.
I was just sharing.
I'm thinking of you.
Okay. I was just sharing in our group that one of the things that, because we utilize our church as part of our outreach to the community. So we do welcome nonprofit groups who, can't pay rent to come and meet and continue their ministry and their mission at, having a safe place in the church. Now that we can't currently open our building to them, we've actually got a Zoom account, just a basic Zoom account, and we've been able to open up meeting space for them that way. So we utilize our Zoom account to enable them to continue to meet and do the work that they're doing.
Isn't that a great idea?
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of churches have now got a Zoom account. You could be generous and share it. Are there others who would like to unmute themselves to share some stories?
I'm not sure who from our group on group 8 who chose to be the to do the recording or to add something. We were so busy talking, I don't know if that happened. So,
well, what did you hear? What did you hear, Jerry?
Well, there are a couple of things I thought that we had a discussion, first of all, of gratitude and and hospitality. Something I don't know if I really understood that, and we talked a bit about that, of seeing that ultimately leading to relationship, and that was interesting. Of how to create that. I asked the question, so who have you received, if you've sent a receipt out and got a thank you note? I just thought that was one person of the group said she had. But so those kind of things, and we looked at different sizes and where we were of how we did that and how we lived that out. It's about, ultimately, we all agreed it was about relationships. So that was kind of the conversation. If there's someone else in our group wants to kind of correct me or something, they should do that. All right, thank you.
Well, there was one thing I want to add from our group, and actually I brought it up, maybe that's why I'm saying it, but talking about online services, and the problem that I've seen with the ones that I attend is there's only one person on camera because it's Facebook Live. Right. And if anyone wants to interact or chat, they have to do it by text. Mm-hmm. Now, if it were Zoom And there was someone who was online looking at the service just because they're wondering about it, but they're too nervous to actually go into a church. If it's on Zoom, it might be easy, to ask them what do they think and to get a response. And I also want to, I'll make it quick, just one more thing, that there's alternatives to Zoom. There's Facebook rooms now, which is totally free. There's a few others. There's one I've used called Jitsi from the open source community. And we should be looking at some of those alternatives too.
Thanks, Karen. Christine.
Hi, it's Christine Burton, and I was in group 5. We talked about an experience that I had where somebody in my neighborhood over the Easter weekend dropped off cookies to my house with a little Easter egg sort of attachment note card and a little attachment on it that also spoke to the risen Christ. And we talked about the idea of doing something like that a few times a year, if each member of the congregation of the committee were to do that just on their own block. That first of all, that like if we had something that said, this is Happy Thanksgiving from your neighbor Christine. I attend this parish at this time, and I'd love to see you there. And even if people didn't come, that it was building relationship, that like neighboring is in effect part of stewardship, that building of community. And over time, it could bring people to us, but more importantly is that it builds that relationship.
Thanks, Christine.
There are a few questions in the chat room, Susan. Ruth asks the question, she says, the question came up as to how do you thank people when there is the confidentiality requirements?
Well, you don't have to be saying thank you very much for your donation of X number of dollars. You could say something like, it's been brought to my attention by the treasurer that you have made a generous extra donation at this time. You don't have to. You can make it. In fact, if it would be important to actually make it clear that you don't know the amount.
Yes, I agree with that.
Just need to say that I'm a member of the committee, and we are all contacting people who've made an extra donation. Jane.
Yeah, same. I think it's confidential doesn't mean secret. Okay, just so, I mean, it's not that you don't know they go to your church or that they're going to be giving in the offering. But the important part is you don't know how much, and you know what? Quite frankly, it doesn't matter. Participation is more important than anything, as we know. And so thank you for your participation. Thank you for continuing to support this important ministry. I think those kinds of thank yous are beautifully received.
It used to be that I used to hear people say, oh, well, we don't do thank yous because we might miss someone. So we won't do the right thing because we might make a bit of a mistake. And wait a minute, aren't we a community about forgiveness?
Yes.
So see if you can get over that hurdle by just saying, we're going to do our best. We're going to do our best.
Yeah. I've been left out before. It's not fatal.
Did you tell them you were left out? Yeah. Did you say, listen, I'm feeling a little hurt? I don't know. Yeah. But I do think it's important that we make sure better to thank someone twice than to not thank them at all. Right?
Yeah.
Err on the side of generous thanks.
Yes. Yeah.
I would like to echo that because I think we often have a part of our culture of not wanting to look as though we know what people are giving means we ignore the fact that they're giving it all.
Exactly.
Except for the end of year income tax receipt. And because we don't want to miss anybody. We often don't thank people specifically. So I think there's a lot we can learn in terms of thanking. And I'm going to thank for joining us today and being part of this conversation. And there's probably, I think it sparked some ideas, and even I think the puzzlement of how does gratitude and hospitality connect. I think that's a good brain stretcher for us to be thinking about. And making those connections so that we continue to mull this over and think about what it means to be a truly welcoming community, and what that does in terms of speaking to the gospel. So I'm just going to wrap things up in the last couple of minutes and remind folks of a few things for next week. So thank you to Susan and Jane for joining us from Ontario and BC, joining us here in the prairies.
Just a privilege to be here. Thank you.
And so for next week, a couple of things. Just a reminder, you don't need to register for the additional sessions. It's the same link you've been given. And we have an announcement that I made at the beginning. I want to reiterate now. We've added an additional session, which will be on June 18th, same time, which is with Lucas from Canada Helps. And if you have particular questions or concerns you'd like him to raise, if you haven't put it in chat, although there was one comment about it, you can also email me, Cheryl, at stewardship@sastel.net. So stewardship@sastel.net is my email, and he would appreciate any heads up of things you particularly want to discuss. Next week.
Cheryl,
yes.
Could I just say one thing about, could I just say one thing about Canada Helps? I'm a big fan. And I've been to their office in Toronto, and they have hired the most wonderful group of young-ish people to be on their help desk. And they all know that mostly they are working with people over 55 who are not necessarily the most adept at technology, and they are the most patient and hospitable service desk that I've ever been part of or had received the services of. So,
and me too.
Have a great time with them.
Yeah, and I was just going to say, I'm not sure if everybody knows or understands that Canada Helps is also a Canadian charity. Yeah. So I do hear congregations kind of balk at the 3.5% or whatever it is once you've claimed your thing. Then it's for me, I think we live in a time of, if you don't offer it, you're going to be out that money and more. But it's a time of our life where we need to let go about the niggly 3%. It's the cost of doing business, and they are a charity, and that basically just covers their fees that they have to pay to the credit cards. So nobody's gouging anybody here. Your money stays in Canada. It doesn't get picked up in the States by the Homeland Security or anything like that. So I'm just, I couldn't think they're more wonderful. I think they're just great.
Thank
you.
Yep. Thank you for those affirmations. And Lucas is a prairie boy who's looking forward to at least being here virtually with us. Next week, our final session is on legacy giving, sometimes called plan giving. And that will be led by Curtis Krug, who is a member of the planning committee here and a professional financial planner, as well as someone who gives a lot of his time to nonprofit organizations on this topic and the church. He's a warden in one of the churches as well. So we'll see you next week at the same time. And if you want to go back over this, you can always catch it on the Archdiocese YouTube channel, and it'll eventually make its way to the Diocese of Qu'Appelle YouTube channel and Saskatchewan Synod. Thanks, everyone. Bye.